Hey, so today we're going to be installing WSL and CMake as followed in the instructions. This video is just hopefully to provide some visuals and some clarification on how to go through the process. So one of the first things that we're going to want to do is we're going to want to get Visual Studio Code installed. So you want to open your web browser. I'm going to be using Microsoft Edge, but you can use Firefox or Chrome or whatever you like. So you probably already have Visual Studio Code, so you won't need to go through this step. But we are going to configure it a little bit together. Let me also pull up the page with the documentation for how to go through the setup. So let's do that. Okay. I can't type. Excellent. So here we are on the documentation page, and this is what we're going to be able to do to set up. So this is a completely fresh install of Windows. So if I open up my PowerShell here, it will not have any WSLs installed. So I type WSL-LV, it's the short form of list verbose, and I run it, and there are no WSLs installed. I'm running Windows 11, and if you're on Windows 11 or a modern build of Windows 10, you can do WSL install distribution Ubuntu, and this will install Ubuntu with all of the necessary parts. However, most of you are likely going to be running WSL 1. So Microsoft has documentation on how to install WSL, and this is again the modern way, but we have to use the older way. So we have to enable it effectively step by step. So, whoops. First thing that we'll do is we'll enable WSL. So now I'm running WSL 1, effectively the same as y'all are. I could launch, or I can install Ubuntu and launch it if I wanted to. So let's do that. I have to install it from the Microsoft Store. All right. So I've now installed Ubuntu. And if I launch it, it wants me to restart my computer so that I will have finished installing WSL. So I'll restart real quick here, and then I'll come right back. Okay. So now we have installed WSL 1. So if I launch Ubuntu, okay. So already it's expecting that we want to be on WSL 2, which is good. That's what we're going to want for this class. So if I do WSL LV, we can see that there are no WSL distributions installed. So we want to use WSL2, not WSL1. If you do WSL LV, there are pretty good odds that you're going to have Ubuntu something probably stopped or running, and then 1 on the right. If it says 1, you're going to need to go through these steps. So let's go pull up that documentation page again. So we will need to enable the virtual machine platform feature. By the way, to upgrade from WSL 1 to 2, here are the instructions, and you can see it's the same command. We need to enable the virtual machine platform feature. So, oops. There we go. Right, we need to be an administrator version of PowerShell. That's what the instructions say. So let's launch PowerShell as an administrator, and we can run that command. So now we're going to need to restart our computer again. So I will say yes, and it'll restart for us real quick here. Okay. So we've restarted here, and now we need to go back to the documentation so that we can see what to do next. So now what we want to do is we want to download and run this package. So this is the WSL update package. So I can click on that, and it will allow us to run WSL2. So we want to run the following commands. Let's go to PowerShell. We don't need to be administrator for these. We want to set WSL to version 2. It'll say the operation completed successfully. And now, if we already have Ubuntu installed, we need to set its version to 2. So we want to run WSL set version Ubuntu 2. So replace name with whatever version of Ubuntu you have installed. That'll be the name that you see whenever you do WSL LV. Again, I don't have anything installed yet. So let's install from the Ubuntu app that we have. So it says installing here. And this will take just a few minutes to complete. And we'll have Ubuntu running, hopefully WSL2. We'll do another little check. So let's first get a username and a password. I like to use my NetID, so I'm going to do Dante B. And then your password should be fairly short and quick to type. It won't, by the way, show any characters. So whenever I was typing there, you couldn't see any characters. It does that intentionally. But there we go. Once we've made it in, we're good. Let's run a few commands. Update and upgrade. So update effectively checks for updates, and upgrade really installs them. So whenever we first set up Ubuntu, it's a bit out of date. So we run these commands in order to update our system. With the upgrade command, it'll ask you if you want to confirm. But what I did is I passed a -y, and it automatically confirmed for me. So we go over here, we can see that we're running Ubuntu from WSL2. So everything is set up correctly as far as Ubuntu, and we can now start installing the apps that we need as soon as it finishes updating. So the way we want to do that is we go to the WSL setup section. Now, this setup section assumes that you've already got a few apps installed from CSCE 121. I don't have those apps installed because I've just set up Ubuntu for the first time here, so I'm going to install a little bit more than just Git. And I'm going to wait for this to complete, and I'm going to reopen Ubuntu in Terminal. So Windows Terminal is a tool that's installed by default on Windows 11 systems, but you can get it on Windows 10 by going to the Microsoft Store and searching Windows Terminal. And Windows Terminal is a really nice way to try and run WSL because you can change the font size and make things a little bigger. So that's probably what I'll do just so that you can see what commands I'm typing a little easier. So it looks like our update finished, and I'm going to make this full screen. So right now I'm in the Mount C users folder, and my username is user, but I don't want to be here. I want to be under tilde, so I can do cd tilde, or I can just type cd, and now I'm in the tilde directory. So tilde is this little squiggle symbol here, and this is my home. If you ever want to know where you are, you can type pwd. That stands for print working directory, and we're in home, and then the username that we created. So our username is Dante B. This, by the way, is the name of your computer. So my computer is called Dante PCVM, so that's why it says that there. But now that we're within here, we want to install some stuff. So sudo apt install. Again, you can do -y to avoid having to confirm that you want to install. And you probably installed this in 121, but we'll install it here. Build essential and GDB. Then we want git, and that's really all that we're going to need to install at this stage because we can't install CMake quite yet. So we'll run these commands. and we have to type in our password again. Sudo, by the way, means execute with all privileges. Installing stuff, you're required to be an administrator on your system, so that's what sudo does, is it gets you into that mode. Also, properly it should be pronounced sudo, as it stands for super user do, SU do, but I pronounce it sudo incorrectly. So there we go. We've now finished installing those packages. So we can go over and we can look at installing CMake into WSL. So we want to run these two commands. So I'll start with this one up here. So curl lets you download something. So we're downloading this kitware archive sh script, and then we're running it with sudo. So we download it and we run it. And what this has done is this has made it so that we can install CMake. So now on the very next line, we'll install CMake. Oop, I apologize. I think this came up and messed me up. Yeah. Okay. So now we've installed all of the tools that we're going to need for the course. We can skip the MSVC stuff. That's if you choose to use Visual Studio primarily, but we want to use Visual Studio Code. So the next step that we're going to need to do is we're going to need to configure our VS Code install. So let's see, did it actually finish installing VS Code? Looks like it did. So with VS Code, we want to get these extensions, and we can get all of them by getting the C extension pack. So if I search for C++, I find the extension pack right here. And if I install it, it'll install all of the extensions that I need and a little bit more. Some of these we won't use, but that's fine. So we now have WSL, which is good. And if we click on the lower left here, this is how you're going to do this a lot. You can click New WSL window. So now we can close the original VS Code. You'll notice the new window in the bottom left has a larger green section, and it says WSL Ubuntu. So that's what we want. We now want to install some extensions. In WSL Ubuntu, you can see that there's no extensions installed, but in our not Ubuntu version, we have 10. If we click the cloud and then click Select All, we can now install all of our extensions automatically into the Ubuntu system. There's a few extensions here that I recommend for quality of life. These two help you better with Git. These three help you with, seeing indentation, tabs in your code, brackets in your code, and reading rainbow CSV files. We also have some themes to change the default look and feel if you don't like the original color scheme, and icons for similar, as well as a few optional settings. But we don't really need to do any of this. Once we have the extensions, we are effectively good. So let's go back. Now that we've got VS Code all set up, what we want to do is we want to run the setup project. So I click on the setup project page, and I have to do a git clone. So I can do it through Ubuntu through my terminal, or I can do it through VS Code. So it's probably best to do it through the terminal, just so that you can see it. What we want to do is type git clone this URL. This URL is the URL for the setup hello world assignment, but usually you'll have assignment dash whatever the assignment is, so assignment vector. One thing that you should note too is make sure you are in tilde whenever you clone this, either tilde or whatever directory you want, because whenever you run the command, it'll ask for your username and password. These are the credentials that you have to log into Canvas. So for instance, if I go to canvas.tamu.edu, it asks for the username, so I type in Dante B. That's my net ID. It's different from your UIN. That's the long set of numbers. And then you have a password, right, to get in. Well, it's going to be the same credentials down here. So Dante B is my username, and then I type in my password. Okay, so unpacking objects means that it worked, and we can tell by typing ls. That lists all the files. So ls tells me that we do have the setup hello world folder, and this is why it's important you're in tilde. Wherever you are, whenever you type this command, it will create the folder wherever you're at. And since I was in tilde, the folder is in tilde. So let's go into that folder. CD lets you change directory. So I'm going to go into the setup hello world folder within tilde. So now I'm in tilde setup hello world. So now that we're here, what we want to do is we want to open this in VS Code. So if I want to do that, I can say code dot, and it should open here. Another option is to go into VS Code and open it ourselves. So we can click open folder, and we can see that by default, we're in home Dante B. That's another name for tilde. So we can click setup hello world and OK. And VS Code will launch. We want to say that we do trust. What that does is that enables all of the extensions that we installed. And CMake has helpfully said, do we want to set up the project? So we can say yes. So at the top here now, it's popped up these options. And one of the options is scan for kits, unspecified, or GCC. We're going to want GCC. This selects G++ as your compiler, which is what you want to do on Linux. So I'll click that. And now what it's done is it's configured to be able to run the setup hello world. It created a build folder for us here, and it's automatically going to be reading the code in the source folder. So let's make this a bit bigger. So again, it's created a build folder, it's reading the code in the source folder, and this is just a simple hello world program. So if we want to run, we can click the run button at the bottom here, and it'll automatically run our code, and it says hello world. And if we make changes to the code, it will automatically run again with the changes. If we don't make changes to the code, it runs a little bit faster because it already built the code. If we want to build without running, we can click the build button. And if we have problems with our code, for instance, a missing semicolon, and we click build, it tells us the problems in the problems tab. So we can click on problems, and we can see we expected a semicolon before this line. So both of those problems came up, so we'll just go put a semicolon in. And that now fixes our problems. We can build and they go away. Build finished with exit code 0 is good. And again, we can run. So this is how you can set up your assignments. We'll do a similar thing to set up assignment 1. So we can come back over here and we can go back up to tilde. So remember, you can do CD tilde or CD. But at any point, if you ever want to go up one level, you can also say CD dot dot. Dot dot means go up a level. So now we go up from setup hello world all the way up to tilde. And here we want to get the assignment for vector. So what we'll do is we'll change the URL here to say we want to do git clone assignment vector. And again, it'll want our password. So now what we can do is we can go into VS Code and we can open up the assignment vector folder. We say, yes, we trust. And again, would you like to configure the project? Yes, I would. And we'll select the G++ compiler. Now, this has given me the option, would I like to always configure projects upon opening? That's fine. I'm okay with that. And again, it's created a build folder for us, but it's going to be reading the code out of the source folder. We also have tests. You'll be able to run your code against the tests. So let's try that.